Well, the process of choosing the next U.S. president officially starts tonight in Iowa. But on the internet, the battle for the hearts and minds of American voters has been raging for months. Here's a little sample.
I'm Mike Huckabee, and I approve this message. So did Chuck.
Chuck Norris approved.
We have a faltering economy, an energy crisis, and 47 million people without health care.
We went in there illegally. We did not declare war. It's lasting way too long. We're losing this one. We shouldn't be there. We ought to just come home.
As the next president doesn't need foreign policy experience. John McCain for president.
I'm John McCain, and I approve this message.
Oh, there you go. And it's about much more than the candidates' websites. There are endless blogs for and against each nominee. There's Facebook, YouTube, you name it. And it's changing everything from fundraising to mobilizing to mudslinging. Our tech analyst, Jesse Hirsh, is here to tell us more. So Henry was mentioning that, of course, this is a big dimension, but you have been surveying the scope of all of this. How big a deal? At some point, you have to think the internet is going to emerge as the front for all campaigns.
Well, and I think it will be for this election. I think as the momentums and dips and turns go, the way the narrative will be articulated is the internet playing a central role. That'll be internet videos, internet spin, internet mobilizing that I think will make the key difference for victory in this election.
We have to assume then each candidate has a sizable staff dedicated to exclusively exploring all avenues, all vehicles on the internet, right?
Absolutely. And these staffs, I suspect, are growing in size, perhaps larger than traditional spin doctors who deal with the mainstream media.
So which candidate, in your view, based on what you've seen, is perhaps the savviest when it comes to harnessing the internet?
Well, I think there's a few, and explicitly if you look at Mike Huckabee, who has been really quite leading for certain parts of December, it's partly through his Chuck Norris video that he did on the internet. Chuck Norris is kind of an internet subculture hero on the net, and that video really brought a lot of attention to him. Similarly, Edwards and McCain have both used the internet to basically prop up campaigns that were otherwise written off as dead, but none of them can touch Ron Paul, who's this fringe candidate congressman from Texas.
I was just going to say Ron who, but I gather he's managed to help bankroll his campaign better than anybody else through the internet.
All internet metrics show him as ludicrously popular. He raised $20 million, including $6 million in a single day, and he had nothing to do with it. His campaign was not involved. The internet is doing this autonomously, without his help, without his campaign's involvement, and it speaks to literally the letting go of total control as a successful internet strategy.
Wow, that is wild. Now, I have to assume that with this enterprise and the innovation and probably some funny, mischievous material, there is also perhaps the more sinister or more aggressive mudslinging. Give us examples of just what's caught your eye as you've seen all the stuff that's out there.
Well, I think the anti-Hillary is really the most overwhelming, and I suspect the anti-Hillary group is more popular than any pro-group on the internet. You know, Henry Champ mentioned some of the anti-Islam slurs that are being associated with Barack Obama. You know, a lot of conservatives are attacking Romney's Mormon links, people attacking Huckabee's Christian links. It really is the place to throw anything and everything at the other candidates, which I think on the one hand appeals to people who are into the cynicism of politics, but I suspect it also turns off voters who are really sick of this negative tone in politics.
So obviously all the candidates have accepted that there is a tremendous opportunity and potential through the internet. Are they demographically targeting a sector of the voting population, or is it much broader based now?
Well, it's a little bit of both. It is broader based, but it's also extremely targeted. For example, there's a lot of senior citizens who are online. That's one of McCain's key demographics, and he's using the internet in quite a clever way to reach out to veterans, to reach out to retired people, and it's people you'd think would not be using the internet, yet he's effectively reached out to them. And that type of targeting speaks to the success of all these candidates, that they're identifying exactly who they are, which particular part of Iowa they live in, to make sure that they have their supporters mapped out completely for fundraising, for mobilizing, for making sure that they're able to win the election.
Just speaking of mobilizing, you mentioned Ron Paul and the tremendous fundraising dynamic that kicked in on the internet. But generally speaking, does positive buzz for a particular candidate on the internet, do people know that that tends to translate directly into votes?
Not yet, and part of the issue, I think, in this election will determine if it will. We're seeing a lot of fluctuation in polls that are tied to this buzz. Whether that affects people when they place their ballot, we'll have to see. But the fact that Huckabee and McCain and Edwards are still in this race, and we're even talking about Ron Paul, speaks to their power. If they can convert that into votes, this will be really an entirely different election cycle than we've ever seen.
I have to assume that even after the results of tonight's vote in Iowa, the field will narrow in some way, the stakes will get higher, the campaign will rev up. So what will you be watching for on the internet?
Well, explicitly, I'm looking at Rudy Giuliani, who sat out the Iowa caucus, but his internet infrastructure, I feel, is quite advanced, has funding and has expertise, that he may come out of nowhere with that internet power to really snatch this one away.
Okay, lots to watch for. Jesse, thanks for this.
Thank you.
And speaking of online, you can find more on the U.S. presidential race, including complete biographies of each candidate on our website. You can see the pictures there. Lots of information. That's cbcnews.ca.